I'm the Witchfinder, and this is my first ever proper video. The Granblue Fantasy Relink demo dropped yesterday, and I was more than excited to spend some time with the characters Cygames is giving us an early look at. For context, my usual taste in video games consists of JRPGs, MMOs, and action RPGs, particularly in the vein of Devil May Cry and Dark Souls. Most notably, I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV since around 2015, engrossed with it since the lockdown starting in 2020, and have been absolutely obsessed with it since I started raiding with my current static. That's not to say I have any real authority on criticizing games, or saying that I'm a real gamer and you need to listen to my opinions. Rather, I just wanted to provide you that information so you have an idea of what my preferences are coming into Relink. Otherwise, I have no real connection to Cygames. My deepest history with Granblue is playing a buttload of Versus Rising last month, and dabbling a little bit in the gacha game, here and there since then, but those aren't really my things. In fact, I only really learned about Relink a few months ago, and what really got me into it was the boss fights, showcased by Cygames, and how much they reminded me of Final Fantasy raids, but with action combat, and without the fun, we'll call it, that is snapshotting. So what do I think of the demo? I'd say it's a fantastic slice of pure game to set your expectations for the full release in just a few weeks, at least in terms of the combat. Relink's gameplay avoids a problem I was really concerned about when I first learned about the game. Style over substance. Pretty much every skill in Relink is a flashy anime effect that looks really cool when you're watching it, which is great. My concern mostly comes from a history of games that have all of those flashy effects, but lack any of the impact to make them feel as cool as they look. This, unfortunately, leads to flashy combat in games feeling rather floaty, and eventually, the visual spectacle becomes tiresome and it just becomes boring. Almost immediately with Relink, however, the combat proved to me that this wasn't an issue. Every combo hit and skill felt like it was given the appropriate treatment in terms of audio and visual feedback, and I could really feel the impact of each hit because of how much of the game emphasizes breaking weak points, at least for the boss fights. Better yet, this wasn't a case of the gameplay feeling right for some characters, wrong for others. I played every character and they all felt just right for what the developers were going for. Coming from Versus Rising, I knew immediately the first two characters I wanted to play were Zeta and Narmaya. Zeta's air loops emphasizing landing perfect hits to chain further into her air combo and leading into a big finisher? Brilliant. Narmaya's focus on switching between stances and using combo finishers to swap between them while maintaining her butterflies for amplified skill effects? Glorious. Both felt entirely unique from each other, but both felt so distinctly fine-tuned to the developer's intent that it was hard not to feel the energy of their characters. And the best part, that's true of every character. I played every single one of them, and each felt so distinct from the rest. Even characters that have very similar core attributes feel like they serve their own playstyles. For example, Lancelot and Charlotta both place an emphasis on semi-stationary, infinite light combos that build up speed as you go. Both are especially insane in a mechanic we'll talk about later called blink time, and how they really shave off time to get you closer to that finish in less than X goal, because they do so much damage. Yet they both also manage to feel really different because of their skill loadouts. Lancelot gets the benefit of having an ability that can, in this game's terms, glaciate or freeze the enemy, along with supporting low cooldown abilities that keep his gameplay varied between his light attack combo. Meanwhile, Charlotta is equipped with buffs that increase her damage and reduce the amount she takes. Her kit emphasizes high jumps that can be timed just right to block incoming damage rather than interrupting her light combo. And on paper, both of these characters should feel kinda samey, and in a sense, they do, but they also feel so different. I won't go over every single character in the demo, but I do think, while I currently do not intend to main her in the full game, Io is the standout of the demo. Final Fantasy XIV friends, we have our black mage of the game. I just hope you're okay with being a cute 11-year-old because I know you'll be more than okay with her casting systems. Io's Stargaze loop feels like a shining example of how thoughtfully designed each character is. Her primary mechanic is to build up what are called Mystic Vortexes. Io can stack up to 3 of these and can either earn them by charging up her light attack or fully landing one of her spell skills. The real goal with Io, however, is to use those Mystic Vortexes on Stargaze, her heavy attack that can charge up to Stargaze 5 depending on how many Mystic Vortexes you have. Better yet, Black Mage fans, you love your ley lines, right? Yeah, Io basically has that. One of her skill options places a stationary field that both speeds up Stargaze charge time and makes it so casts aren't interrupted by incoming non-crowd control damage. This leads to a really engaging combat loop of building stacks to spend on that really cool feeling of channeling a massive hit. Healers adjust. Except, you know, Io can heal too. While on the topic of how each character manages to feel unique, it is time to unfortunately bring up one of my few minor complaints regarding the demo. I feel like Cygames really made a mistake by not including training dummies anywhere, at least none that I could find. While I greatly enjoyed playing every character, I gotta say, as I revisit the demo, I'm feeling a lot less inclined to replay Siegfried and Gandagosa just because I don't have a more focused way to hone in on their combos and how much they emphasize perfect timing. I think it's a real missed opportunity on player engagement to not give people the option of really getting their practice on a character ahead of the release. And I suppose that most of the cast gameplay is understood quickly enough that you can really just repeat the boss fights for that. But it would be a nice addition, especially, like I said, for those who emphasize perfect timing. I'm going to keep playing Zeta because she only has to do it once per loop, or I guess technically 3 times, but it's still spaced out rather than Siegfried and Gandagosa's like 4 perfect hits in a row. Back to the topic of bosses, though. How do those encounters actually feel? Well, the first mission is entirely a fight against mostly trash mob goblins with the occasional shielded big gobble boy in the last couple of packs. And the story portion of the demo is pretty much that as well. It's fine. Heck, I had a ton every time I played it. But it wasn't really anything to write home about. Mostly it felt like the space where you were supposed to learn your character's abilities in lieu of proper training mode. The bosses, though, like Crocodile and the Rock Golem, are both very active fights that highlight the importance of well-timed dodges and make the importance of breaking weak points and activating link time to get massive damage in order to meet the time-restricted sub-objectives so obvious. Both also have really cool overdrive phases that basically buff the bosses and make them take less damage while also letting them be more mechanically aggressive. And I think they give a really good indication of what we're going to see in the later game and the hard modes. Rock Golem's mix of melee and AoE attacks during its overdrive in particular have been really compelling, as I've been trying to perfectly dodge attacks for immunity frames while trying to greed in that damage in a space that I know isn't really safe, but I really want to hit that time attack. Rock Golem also highlights optional but effective options when it comes to approaching an encounter. Every now and then, 2 little earth sprites spawn. These little guys are bastards. They send out small ground waves that encase you in sand when you get hit, leaving you unable to use any of your attacks or abilities. Although, you can move, albeit very slowly. This kind of hints at the prep we may be doing on a per encounter basis. Within the sigil system, basically a gear system that has you choosing passives, we're given the option for sandblast and dizzy resistance of different levels. These can greatly reduce the effects and dangers of getting hit by a sandblast or having your character stunned by a big hit from a friendly neighborhood rock. With only 3 sigil slots, you've really got to consider whether that extra safety is worth sacrificing the potential gains in damage. For me, personally, it's always about the big numbers. And then I regret my life decisions as I get chain juggled and pummeled by an unfortunate series of rocks. Additionally, when you kill these little earth sprites, they drop little bombs that you can then throw at the Rock Golem to do a decent amount of weak point damage. So you really got to balance whether or not that's worth taking the time to do compared to the damage you could be doing direct. But also considering that while you could greed out more damage by just focusing on the boss, ignoring the sprites, You could also risk getting hit by a sandblast, and then your DPS goes down from there. On the topic of DPS, link time is huge. Link time is a mechanic that builds up after a certain amount of link attacks made by the party. Once this gauge builds up to 100%, link time activates once the party successfully executes back-to-back link attacks. This does mean that anyone missing their link attack in that sequence ends up putting the team behind just because that opportunity might not come back for another 30 seconds, maybe even longer. When it does activate, however, link time slows down time and greatly increases damage and reduces your cooldowns, making this the most impactful moment to hit that DPS to make sure you get under that time requirement. In the demo, under 3 minutes for the bosses. And I think the gameplay speaks for itself. It's pretty cool. So, this has been a pretty overwhelmingly positive impression of a relatively short demo that I spent 12 hours on, and will probably continue to play occasionally leading up to release. So do I have any real complaints or concerns with the demo? Well, yeah, kind of. They're not really complaints, just things I wish we would see. As hinted at earlier, mostly the demo feels like it just addresses the meat of what we'll be playing in February, tight combat with diverse and compelling skill sets. And that's awesome, but I'm a little disappointed that we get no insight into the actual RPG systems around the combat, aside from a little bit of gearing and being able to swap one skill for a fifth skill instead of your starting 4. Outside of that, you don't get any additional sigils throughout the demo to experiment more with light character building. There's nothing we currently get a real preview of in town. Like, if you walk up to the blacksmith, you're just going to see a message that says it's available in the full game. Even the missions tease you by spawning chests that'll clearly give you loot in the full game, but give you absolutely nothing in the demo. There's no real opportunity to see what gathering materials and crafting new gear is like. Does this tarnish the demo? Not really. Do I think Cygames is hiding anything? Probably not. After all, the most important thing is how the game actually feels, and I think they nailed that, and really wanted to just focus on that. It's just that I really, really would have loved to get a nice feeling for the systems around what we're really all here to play. Otherwise, my only complaint, aside from the lack of the outer systems and the training dummies, are relatively minor things that could be addressed by a post-launch or maybe even pre-launch update. The biggest thing, and really I think the only thing worth mentioning among those small things, is that the Skybound arts with AI can feel really, well, unfortunate sometimes. I really think they could benefit from shortcuts for each character so you can tell who to start the Skybound art chain, since that's what causes the element to be determined for the full burst. The big issue I'm finding right now is that the AI will use Skybound arts as soon as it recognizes that a full burst is possible, regardless of who's actually starting the chain. This can be worked around by setting the AI to hold until you use your Skybound art. But that becomes an issue if you're playing a character whose element doesn't match the elemental weakness of the enemy you're fighting. You can further work around this by setting AI Skybound art to hold and then toggling it to auto once a party member with the correct element has fully built up their gauge. At least from what I noticed, it seems like the game will properly prioritize that element as long as that character has 100%. But this is still really disruptive to the gameplay while you're trying to execute your flashy skills and combos. Bringing up that menu is just kind of a little annoyance. Other than that, there's no real major complaints I have with the demo outside of it not being available on the platform I'm going to play on, which is PC. I'd really like to see how it performs and if there's any issues there, especially with an unfortunate legacy of how Japanese ports can go on PC, although I do think they've been vastly improved over the past couple of years. So am I planning on playing the game at launch? Am I still as excited as I was coming into the demo? Hell yeah. Who am I planning on maining from the demo cast? Probably Zeta. but if my experience in Versus Rising has taught me anything, it's that Cagliostro will probably be too fun, and I'll be begrudgingly playing the 1,000 of years old Lolly. The game does have a genetics of a character action game, or a CAG after all. I am really excited to see how the rest of the characters play, especially characters like Fairy and Rosetta, and I think it'd be a really cool surprise if our antagonists, like Magiel, end up being additional playable characters. From what little I've played of the original Granblue Fantasy, that doesn't seem like it would be too out of place. I'm extremely excited for this game, and I think that it'll be the thing that holds me over until Dawntrail, if not further beyond. I'd love to say I'll be streaming the game on day one, but unfortunately my friends and I primarily play on PC, which doesn't get the early access the PlayStation versions get. So I'll just say I'll see you in February. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to watch my first ever video. My goal with this channel is a mix of things. I love games, just like so many other creators on this platform, but I'm also an illustrator, a writer, and currently trying to make the dream of designing a tabletop RPG come true. I'd really love to share my experiences with those fields and my thoughts on a variety of other topics, and I really hope we can have some really neat conversations here. But for now, this is the Witchfinder, signing off and wishing you a wonderful existence. Also, you can't pet the cats. This game sucks, don't buy it.